There is a reason this message has found you, and if you feel a strange pull to keep listening, it may be because something in your life is about to shift in a way most people will never experience. Chosen one, many people around you believe your life has been slow, difficult, or even delayed. But what they failed to understand is that God was never rushing your story. While others were chasing temporary relationships, quick validation, and shallow success, you were walking through seasons of isolation that forced you to grow in patience, discernment, and strength. Scripture already warned that the path of the prepared is rarely comfortable, because as it is written in Isaiah 60:22, "When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen." What you called loneliness was often divine separation. What you called delay was often divine positioning. And what others called failure was often God removing the wrong people before the right connection could ever enter your life. Now listen carefully, because this message is not for everyone watching. Many will click away because the truth challenges their assumptions. But if you are still here, it may be because you recognize something familiar in these words. There are seasons in life when heaven prepares a person not for a job, not for an opportunity, but for a connection that changes everything. And sometimes that connection arrives through someone whose life is already established, someone whose resources, influence, and stability are not accidents, but tools that God intends to use. Before we go deeper, take a moment and type the word "ready" in the comments if you feel that your life has been preparing for something greater than what you see right now. And make sure you stay until the end of this message, because what you are about to understand may reveal why your life has never followed the same path as everyone else around you. Chosen one. One of the most frustrating parts of your journey has been watching everyone else move through life on what looks like a normal timeline, while your own path seemed delayed, redirected, or completely out of sync. You may have seen people your age settling into stable relationships, building careers faster, or achieving milestones that the world says should have happened to you already. But what many people fail to understand is that God rarely develops a significant destiny on an ordinary schedule. When heaven is positioning someone for something greater, the timeline often looks strange, uncomfortable, and even unfair to those observing from the outside. What looked like setbacks were often divine interruptions, moments where God refused to allow you to settle into environments that would have limited what you were meant to become. Scripture reminds us of this pattern clearly in Habakkuk 2:3. "For the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay." In other words, what feels late in human timing may actually be perfect in divine timing. And the unusual rhythm of your life may be the clearest sign that God has been positioning you carefully for something that ordinary paths could never produce. Most people move through life believing destiny arrives in obvious forms. They expect the breakthrough to appear as money, a promotion, a business opportunity, or some visible reward that everyone around them can recognize. That is how the world teaches people to measure change. If something significant is about to happen, it must look dramatic, profitable, or immediately successful. But the truth is far more unsettling than that, and many people miss it completely. Some of the greatest shifts God brings into a person's life do not arrive as wealth or opportunity at first. Instead, they arrive as a person. Chosen one. There are moments when heaven does not release the blessing directly. Instead, God aligns you with someone whose presence begins unlocking doors you could never open alone. The connection itself becomes the turning point. What begins as a meeting, a conversation, or an unexpected relationship slowly reveals itself as the instrument through which your life changes direction. Scripture shows this pattern repeatedly. God often moves through people rather than possessions. Ruth did not first receive money, status, or security. She encountered Boaz, and through that encounter, her entire future shifted into a new reality. What looked like a simple connection was actually divine alignment unfolding in real time. This is why Ruth 2:12 declares, "May the Lord reward you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. The reward was not only material provision, the reward was the connection through which God established her future. And this is the part many people never understand. They keep waiting for the miracle to appear in their bank account, their career, or their circumstances, while heaven is quietly preparing a person who will become the doorway to everything they were praying for. Now here is the part many people will struggle to accept, because it challenges the way society talks about relationships. Chosen one. The message unfolding here is not simply about love or companionship. The deeper revelation is that a connection is being prepared, one that carries stability, influence, and resources. In other words, a person who has already built a level of financial strength and life structure may soon enter your path. This is not the fantasy people imagine when they chase status or wealth through relationships. It is something far more intentional. The timing of this connection suggests that God may be aligning you with someone whose life is already established, someone who has the capacity not only to love you, but also to elevate the environment around you. But understand this clearly, because many people misunderstand divine alignment. This connection is not about dependency, rescue, or attaching yourself to someone else's success. In fact, that mindset would destroy the very relationship heaven is preparing. The purpose of this union is not one person carrying the other, but two lives aligning at the right moment so that both can step into a greater level of purpose. Ecclesiastes 4:9 explains this principle with remarkable clarity. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. The power of the connection is not simply emotional, it is functional. When the right people come together, their strengths multiply the impact of what each could accomplish alone. This is why your journey required so much preparation before this moment. A partnership that carries influence, stability, and vision cannot be built on insecurity or dependence. It requires maturity, self-awareness, and the ability to stand firmly in your own identity. The person entering your life may already possess financial resources or a level of success that others admire. But what they will recognize in you is something far rarer: resilience, perspective, and a depth that was forged through seasons most people could never survive. So the message is not that someone wealthy is coming to change your life for you. The message is that a connection may soon appear where two different forms of strength meet. One may carry resources and access, while the other carries insight, endurance, and purpose. And when that alignment happens at the right time, the result is not dependency. It is elevation for both lives. What makes this connection even more significant is not only who this person is, but the environments connected to their life. Chosen one. When God aligns people at the right time, the impact rarely stays limited to emotions or companionship. The right person can introduce you to spaces you were never meant to access alone. New cities, new circles of influence, new opportunities that completely alter the direction of your life. This is how many destinies quietly shift. A single relationship becomes the bridge between the life you have known and the life that has been waiting for you beyond your current environment. The individual entering your life may already operate in places that once felt distant from your reality. Their career, their networks, or even the location where they live may expose you to a level of opportunity that simply did not exist in your current surroundings. And sometimes, the transformation becomes physical as well as spiritual. A relocation, a move to a different city, or even another country may naturally unfold through this connection. What once felt impossible suddenly becomes normal because the environment around you has changed. Scripture has always hinted at this pattern of divine movement. In Genesis 12:1, God tells Abraham, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Notice the pattern. When God prepares a new chapter, it often involves leaving familiar ground and stepping into territory that expands your future. But before a connection like this enters a person's life, there are usually signals, subtle shifts that begin appearing long before the meeting actually happens. Many chosen individuals start feeling restless in environments that once felt comfortable. Certain relationships begin fading, old routines start losing their meaning, and there is a growing sense that something in life is about to change, even if you cannot yet explain how. These moments are not random disruptions. They are often the early signs that God is rearranging circumstances so that the right connection can enter your life at the exact moment it is meant to. And this is where the message becomes even more interesting, because the signs that appear before such a powerful encounter are often far more obvious than people realize once they learn how to recognize them. One of the most confusing parts of your journey, chosen one, is the long season where it seemed like you were forced to walk through life alone, while everyone else quickly found relationships, partnerships, or support systems. From the outside, it may have looked like something was wrong with your timing, as if you were somehow falling behind the normal rhythm of life. People may have even questioned why someone with your character, your loyalty, or your depth continued moving forward without the kind of connection others seem to find so easily. But what most people call delay is often something entirely different when God is involved. For many individuals who carry a unique purpose, long periods of independence are not accidents, they are preparation. Walking alone forces a kind of growth that comfort can never produce. When there is no one else to rely on emotionally, financially, or spiritually, a person is pushed to develop strength from within. You begin learning how to think independently, how to survive difficult seasons without collapsing, and how to recognize the difference between genuine connection and temporary distraction. This process may feel unfair at times, but it builds a foundation that shallow relationships could never support. Scripture speaks to this kind of preparation in Hosea 2:14, where God says, "Therefore, I am now going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her." Notice the symbolism. The wilderness is often where clarity and identity are formed. In other words, your solitude was not abandonment, it was positioning. Many relationships that appeared during your earlier seasons may have fallen apart quickly or never fully materialized, and at the time it may have felt like rejection. But sometimes God removes connections that would interfere with the future He is preparing. Not everyone who shows interest in your life is meant to remain when your true assignment begins unfolding. This is why the season of independence was necessary. A powerful partnership cannot be built on insecurity, emotional dependency, or confusion about identity. The person who is meant to walk beside you in the next chapter will not be looking for someone who needs saving. They will recognize someone who already knows how to stand on their own. And the strength you developed while walking alone may be the very quality that makes this future connection possible in the first place. Another truth many people struggle to accept is that some relationships were never meant to survive the future God was preparing for you. Chosen one, when you look back at certain connections in your past, it may still be difficult to understand why they ended the way they did. At the time, the separation may have felt painful, confusing, or even unfair. You may have believed that if things had worked out differently, your life would already look more stable or complete. But there is a perspective most people only gain much later. Sometimes relationships end not because they failed, but because they were never aligned with the path you were meant to walk. Many individuals who carry a different destiny encounter relationships that feel intense at first, but slowly reveal deeper incompatibilities. The vision for life is different. The level of ambition is different. The emotional maturity is different. One person may want comfort and familiarity, while the other feels an unexplainable pull toward growth, movement, and purpose. When these differences become impossible to ignore, the connection begins to fracture. What looked like love may have simply been timing without alignment. Scripture quietly warns about this kind of misalignment in Amos 3:3. Do two walk together unless they have agreed to do so? The verse is simple, but its meaning is powerful. Two people can care about each other and still be traveling in completely different directions. When the destination is not the same, the relationship eventually reaches a point where continuing together becomes impossible. This is why some of the relationships you once believed would last forever slowly disappeared from your life. Conversations began feeling forced. The sense of unity faded. Situations that once felt promising started producing tension instead of peace. It may have looked like a loss in the moment, but sometimes separation is protection. God will often remove the wrong connections before introducing the one that actually fits the life He has been preparing for you. What many people fail to understand about solitude is that it is rarely empty time. Chosen one, those long periods where you felt separated from deep connection, were not simply seasons of waiting, they were seasons of formation. When life becomes quiet and you are forced to face your own thoughts, your own fears, and your own direction without constant distraction, something begins to change inside you. Emotional strength develops in ways that comfort and companionship could never produce. You learn how to stabilize yourself without relying on someone else to constantly reassure you. And that kind of inner stability becomes extremely rare in a world where most people depend on others to feel secure. Solitude also sharpens discernment. When you spend enough time observing people rather than depending on them, you begin recognizing patterns in behavior, intentions, and character. You start noticing who is genuine and who is simply performing kindness for convenience. This awareness protects you from repeating the same relational mistakes many people make again and again. Proverbs 4:23 warns, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Guarding the heart is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about developing the wisdom to recognize who truly deserves access to your life. At the same time, these quiet seasons shape personal identity. Without the pressure to constantly adjust yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you begin discovering who you actually are, what you value, what you believe, and what kind of future you are willing to pursue. Many people never reach this level of clarity because they move from relationship to relationship without ever standing alone long enough to understand themselves. But for someone being prepared for a meaningful partnership, identity must be established first. The person who eventually walks beside you will not be meeting someone who is still searching for themselves. They will be meeting someone who has already endured the silence, the growth, and the transformation that solitude quietly produces. Another reason this season of walking alone was necessary is because it prevented something that destroys many relationships before they even begin: dependency. Chosen one, when a person never learns how to stand on their own, they slowly begin depending on others for emotional stability, identity, and even survival. At first, it may look like love, but over time it becomes something far more fragile. When someone's sense of worth depends entirely on another person's presence, every disagreement feels like a threat, and every distance feels like abandonment. That kind of pressure quietly suffocates relationships. Your journey forced you into a different kind of development. There were moments when no one was available to validate your decisions, encourage your progress, or reassure you that you were on the right path. You had to learn how to keep moving forward even when recognition was absent. That process built a level of independence most people never develop because they are constantly leaning on someone else to carry the emotional weight of their lives. Scripture describes this inner stability in Galatians 6:5. For each one should carry their own load. The message is not about isolation, it is about responsibility. A healthy life requires the ability to stand without collapsing when support temporarily disappears. This is why the season of solitude was not punishment, but preparation. God was removing the possibility that you would attach yourself to someone simply because you needed validation or security. Instead, you learned how to survive emotionally, spiritually, and mentally on your own foundation. And that changes the entire dynamic of future relationships. When you no longer need someone to complete you, you are finally capable of building a connection based on alignment rather than desperation. So when the right person eventually enters your life, the relationship will not be built on the fear of losing each other. It will be built on two individuals who already know how to stand independently, choosing to walk together not because they must, but because their paths and purposes genuinely align. As this message unfolds, it becomes important to understand the kind of individual who may be entering your life, because this connection is not random, and it is not built on temporary attraction. Chosen one, the person being aligned with your path is likely someone whose life already reflects stability and discipline. This is not someone still experimenting with direction or constantly rebuilding after careless decisions. Instead, their journey has already required years of structure, focus, and persistence. Financial stability in their life did not appear overnight. It came through strategy, responsibility, and the ability to endure pressure while building something that lasts. What makes this individual different from many people you may have encountered in the past is their relationship with success itself. They understand how to create it, maintain it, and protect it. Their habits are not impulsive, and their mindset is not driven by short-term excitement. They think in terms of long-term outcomes, stability, and growth. Proverbs 21:5 speaks directly to this kind of character. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. The discipline that produced their stability is not simply about money. It reflects a deeper pattern of responsibility in how they approach life. This is why the connection between you and this person carries a different kind of energy. Many relationships form between individuals who are both still trying to discover themselves, which often leads to instability and confusion. But the person approaching your path may already understand who they are and what they are building. Their life has structure, their environment reflects progress, and the circles they move within operate at a level that requires maturity and discernment. At the same time, their success has likely exposed them to something many people overlook: how rare it is to meet someone who carries depth of character rather than surface-level ambition. They have seen people chase wealth without wisdom, power without integrity, and relationships based on convenience rather than purpose. Because of this, the person entering your life may value something different when they encounter you. They will not only recognize resilience in your story, but also the strength that was forged through the seasons you were forced to walk alone. But there is another dimension to this person that many people fail to recognize when they hear the word wealth. Chosen one, the individual being aligned with your path, does not only possess material resources. Their true strength often lies in something far deeper: intellectual clarity and strategic thinking. Money alone does not sustain success for long, but wisdom, foresight, and disciplined decision-making create stability that lasts for decades. This person understands systems, timing, and opportunities in ways that most people overlook. They know when to move, when to wait, and when to build quietly without attracting unnecessary attention. In other words, their wealth is not simply stored in bank accounts or visible possessions. It exists in the way they analyze situations, the way they plan for the future, and the way they position themselves before opportunities become obvious to everyone else. Many people chase quick success, but individuals like this build structures that continue producing results long after the initial effort has been made. Scripture describes this kind of deeper wealth in Proverbs 8:18, where wisdom speaks and declares, "Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and prosperity." Notice the order. True prosperity begins with wisdom, not the other way around. Because of this mindset, the person entering your life likely values intelligence, discipline, and perspective more than outward appearances. They have seen enough of the world to know that many people are impressed by status, but lack the depth required to sustain real success. Strategic thinkers often look for partners who understand patience, who recognize long-term vision, and who are not easily distracted by temporary comfort. And this is where your own journey becomes relevant again. The experiences you went through, the isolation, the challenges, the periods of rebuilding, may have quietly developed the same kind of internal strength this person respects. While others were focused only on immediate rewards, you were learning endurance and awareness. When someone who thinks strategically encounters a person with that kind of resilience, the connection often carries a different kind of recognition, as if both individuals understand something about life that most people around them have never had to learn. Individuals who have built stability and success over time tend to develop a different way of evaluating people. Chosen one, someone who has spent years navigating responsibility, pressure, and decision-making, rarely becomes impressed by surface-level charm or temporary confidence. They have already encountered countless personalities, some persuasive, some charismatic, some ambitious. But experience eventually teaches them a deeper truth. Character reveals itself through endurance. Because of this, the person entering your life may be far less interested in appearances and far more attentive to the quiet qualities that most people overlook. Resilience is one of those qualities. A person who has learned to build something meaningful understands that life inevitably includes setbacks, failures, and seasons where progress is slow or invisible. When they meet someone who has survived difficulty without becoming bitter, who has continued moving forward without constant recognition, that kind of strength immediately stands out. It signals a depth that cannot be easily manufactured. Scripture reflects this principle in Romans 5:3-4, which explains that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. In other words, the struggles that once seemed unfair may have been shaping the very qualities that this person respects most. Depth of character becomes even more valuable to someone who has experienced success, because success exposes a difficult reality. Many people are drawn to wealth or stability for the wrong reasons. They may admire the lifestyle, but lack the integrity, discipline, or emotional strength necessary to sustain a meaningful partnership. Over time, this makes individuals with real accomplishments extremely cautious about who they allow close to their lives. This is why your journey matters more than you realize. The resilience you develop during seasons of uncertainty, the self-awareness built through solitude, and the perspective gained from overcoming obstacles all signal something rare. When someone who values stability encounters a person with that kind of inner strength, they often recognize a quality that cannot be bought, copied, or performed. And that recognition can become the foundation for a connection built on respect rather than convenience. When a person like this enters your life, the impact rarely remains limited to the relationship itself. Chosen one, individuals who have already established stability and influence tend to exist within environments that operate differently from what most people are used to. Their daily interactions, professional circles, and social networks often include people who are building businesses, leading organizations, or creating opportunities that never appear in ordinary settings. This means that the presence of such a person in your life can quietly introduce you to spaces you may never have encountered on your own. It is not about being handed success, but about being exposed to environments where opportunity naturally circulates. What many people fail to realize is that environments shape possibility. The conversations you hear, the ideas being exchanged, and the people you meet all influence the direction your life can take. When someone is connected to networks of thinkers, builders, and decision-makers, simply being present in those spaces begins expanding what becomes possible. Proverbs 13:20 expresses this principle with remarkable clarity. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. In other words, the people surrounding you often determine the level of growth available to you. Through this connection, you may gradually find yourself exposed to new perspectives, unfamiliar industries, or opportunities that once seemed distant from your reality. Invitations to events, introductions to influential individuals, or conversations that open unexpected doors may begin appearing in ways that feel almost coincidental. But in many cases, what appears accidental is simply the natural result of entering a different environment. This is why the relationship being prepared carries more significance than many people initially understand. It is not only about companionship or emotional connection. It is about access to ideas, access to networks, and access to opportunities that can expand the direction of your life far beyond the limits of the environment you started in. As the message continues to unfold, it becomes necessary to address something many people hesitate to talk about openly. Chosen one, Wealth and financial stability are often misunderstood in spiritual conversations, yet they play a powerful role in shaping the environments where people operate. When a person has achieved a certain level of financial stability, their life begins to function with a different kind of freedom. Decisions are no longer controlled entirely by survival or immediate pressure. Instead, they gain the ability to choose where to invest their time, which opportunities to pursue, and which environments to enter or leave without the same limitations most people experience. This freedom naturally creates influence. Someone who is financially stable is often able to build networks, support projects, travel between different environments, and access spaces where ideas and opportunities circulate at a higher level. Their resources allow them to think long-term rather than constantly reacting to short-term struggles. Scripture never presents wealth itself as the problem. Rather, it emphasizes the responsibility that comes with it. Ecclesiastes 10:19 notes that a feast is made for laughter, wine makes life merry, and money answers everything. The verse does not glorify money as the ultimate purpose, but it acknowledges its practical role in shaping what is possible within human life. Because of this, the individual entering your life may already possess a level of freedom that most people around you have never experienced. Their financial stability gives them access to environments where decisions are made, businesses are formed, and opportunities begin long before they become visible to the public. They are not constantly limited by the fear of losing everything if one step goes wrong. Instead, they have the space to think strategically and move with intention. This is why wealth matters in this connection, but not for the superficial reasons many people assume. It is not about luxury or status. It is about the freedom to build, influence, and create opportunities that can shape the direction of two lives rather than one. When stability already exists on one side of a partnership and strength of character exists on the other, the result can become something far more powerful than either person could produce alone. Another detail that often surprises people in connections like this is that the person being aligned with your life may not exist within your current environment at all. Chosen one, the individual who is meant to intersect with your path, may already be living in a completely different city, operating in another country, or working within a professional world that feels far removed from the surroundings you know today. This distance is not accidental. Sometimes God keeps two lives in separate environments until both individuals have reached the level of maturity required for the moment they finally meet. Because of this, the connection may initially feel unexpected or even improbable. The places you currently frequent, the people you interact with daily, and the routines that define your life may not appear connected to the environment where this person exists. Yet throughout Scripture, we see that God often moves people across distance when a new chapter is being prepared. Genesis 24 tells the story of how Rebekah was brought from a distant land to meet Isaac, demonstrating that divine alignment is not limited by geography or circumstance. When the timing is right, distance becomes irrelevant. This is why the life of this individual may look very different from the world you have been navigating. Their professional environment may expose them to industries, responsibilities, or opportunities that operate on a much larger scale. The conversations they engage in daily, the problems they solve, and the networks they maintain may reflect a level of structure and influence that is unfamiliar to you now. But that difference is precisely what makes the connection powerful. Sometimes the person who enters your life is not meant to mirror your current environment, but to introduce you to a completely different one. And when two lives that have been developing separately finally intersect, the meeting point often becomes the beginning of an entirely new direction for both individuals. Because this person may exist in a completely different environment, the connection itself can begin triggering changes that extend far beyond the relationship. Chosen one, when two lives that were developing separately finally intersect, one of the most common outcomes is movement. Not necessarily immediately, and not always in a dramatic way, but gradually, the relationship may begin pulling you toward a different location, a different rhythm of life, or an entirely new environment that better supports the future both of you are stepping into. Relocation in these situations rarely feels forced. Instead, it unfolds naturally as opportunities, responsibilities, and shared plans begin aligning in one direction. Perhaps the person you meet already lives in a city where their work, investments, or networks are established. Perhaps their professional environment requires them to remain connected to certain places where growth and influence are concentrated. Over time, the relationship may make it clear that remaining in your current surroundings no longer supports the life that is beginning to take shape. Scripture often reflects this pattern of movement when a new chapter is being prepared. In Genesis 12:1, God speaks to Abraham and says, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." The instruction was not simply about geography. It was about leaving an environment that belonged to the past in order to step into a future that could not exist in the same place. Sometimes transformation requires distance from the old setting where your life originally began. For many chosen individuals, this kind of shift can feel unsettling at first. Familiar surroundings carry memories, comfort, and a sense of identity that is difficult to release. Yet, when a connection aligned with purpose enters your life, the changes that follow are often signs that your environment is expanding. The move is not simply about where you live. It is about stepping into a lifestyle, a level of opportunity, and a direction that reflects the next stage of your journey. What makes this transition even more significant is the effect that a new environment can have on your growth. Chosen one. Potential does not develop at the same speed in every place. Some environments limit people without them even realizing it, surrounding them with routines, expectations, and opportunities that rarely expand beyond what has always existed there. But when a person enters a different circle, one where ambition, creativity, and strategic thinking are part of everyday life, the pace of growth can change dramatically. In many cases, the environments connected to this individual will operate at a different level of energy and expectation. The people around them may be entrepreneurs, leaders, investors, or individuals constantly building new ideas and ventures. Conversations in these spaces often revolve around strategy, expansion, and long-term vision rather than simple survival. Being present in such environments begins to influence how a person thinks, plans, and approaches their own future. Scripture quietly reflects this principle in 1 Corinthians 15:33, which warns, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." The opposite is equally true. Strong environments strengthen those who enter them. This means the relocation or lifestyle shift connected to this relationship is not simply about moving somewhere new. It is about exposure. Exposure to people who think differently, exposure to opportunities that did not exist before, and exposure to expectations that challenge you to operate at a higher level. In these environments, ideas travel faster, connections form more easily, and growth accelerates because the surrounding culture encourages it. Sometimes a person carries enormous potential, but remains in a place that cannot recognize or develop it. When God changes the environment, that potential begins unfolding in ways that were impossible before. What once felt like slow progress can suddenly begin moving with unexpected speed. Not because you changed overnight, but because the environment around you finally matches the level of growth that was waiting inside you. As the moment of such a connection begins drawing closer, subtle shifts often start appearing in a person's life long before the meeting itself happens. Chosen one. One of the most common signs is a growing awareness that your current environment no longer feels permanent. Places that once seemed stable begin feeling temporary, almost as if you are standing in a location that was only meant to hold you for a season rather than a lifetime. Nothing may look dramatically different on the outside, yet internally, something begins telling you that the chapter you are living in now will not be the final one. This feeling can be difficult to explain to others, because from the outside, everything may appear normal. Your routines continue, your surroundings remain familiar, and the people around you may believe your life is simply continuing as it always has. But within you, there is a quiet shift in perspective. You may find yourself thinking about new cities, new opportunities, or different environments in a way you never did before. The place that once felt like home begins to feel more like a temporary station along a longer journey. Scripture often reflects this sense of temporary positioning in the lives of people who were being prepared for something greater. Hebrews 11:13 describes individuals who understood that their current lives were only part of a larger plan, saying they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. In other words, they recognized that where they stood in the moment was not the final destination God had prepared for them. This awareness does not necessarily mean something is wrong with your current life. Instead, it may simply indicate that your season there is reaching completion. When God prepares to introduce a new connection or a new chapter, He often begins by loosening the emotional attachment to the environment you have known. The shift happens quietly at first, but it becomes increasingly clear that the place where you are standing now may only have been the preparation ground for where your life is about to move next. Another sign that this new chapter may be approaching is the sudden appearance of opportunities connected to movement and new connections. Chosen one, you may begin noticing invitations, conversations, or circumstances that pull you outside the boundaries of your normal routine. Situations related to travel, professional events, collaborations, or simply meeting people from entirely different backgrounds may start appearing more frequently than before. At first, these moments might seem ordinary, even coincidental. But when viewed together, they often reveal a pattern, your world slowly expanding beyond the limits of what once felt familiar. Movement has always been one of the ways God positions people for the next stage of their lives. Many of the most important encounters in Scripture happen because someone stepped into a new place or met people they would never have encountered otherwise. Acts 17:26 reminds us that God determined the time set for them and the exact places where they should live. This means the environments you enter and the people you meet are not always random events. Sometimes they are part of a larger arrangement unfolding quietly behind the scenes. Because of this, you may start finding yourself in conversations with individuals who think differently, work in unfamiliar industries, or come from environments far removed from your current life. A simple introduction may lead to another conversation, and that conversation may lead to a new opportunity or connection you had never considered before. The experience may feel unusual at first, as though doors are opening in places you were not actively trying to reach. These moments are often early signals that your life is beginning to shift direction. When the right connection is approaching, the world around you frequently begins expanding in preparation for that meeting. New paths appear, unfamiliar environments become accessible, and the circle of people entering your life slowly grows wider than it has ever been before. Another shift that often appears during this period is far more uncomfortable than exciting opportunities, because it involves the gradual fading of certain relationships. Chosen one. People who once felt naturally aligned with your life may begin feeling distant, not necessarily because of conflict or betrayal, but because the connection itself no longer carries the same energy it once did. Conversations that used to flow easily may now feel repetitive or empty, and the sense of direction you once shared with them may slowly begin separating. This can be confusing because there may be nothing visibly wrong with those relationships. These individuals may still be kind, familiar, and part of your history. Yet internally, something begins to change. The goals you are thinking about, the environments you feel drawn toward, and the way you now see the future may no longer match the rhythm of the people who once surrounded you. What once felt comfortable may begin feeling restrictive, as if the version of you that existed in that circle is slowly evolving into someone else. Scripture often describes this quiet separation that occurs when a person's path begins moving toward a new assignment. In Genesis 13:9, Abraham and Lot reached a point where continuing together was no longer possible, and Abraham simply said, "Let us part company." There was no dramatic hostility in the moment, only the recognition that their journeys were moving in different directions. Sometimes growth creates distance without anyone intentionally causing harm. This does not mean those relationships were meaningless. Many of them served a purpose during the season when they existed. They provided companionship, support, or lessons that shaped who you became. But when a new chapter begins approaching, the connections that belong to a previous stage of life often lose their relevance naturally. The space created by that distance is not emptiness. It is preparation for the people who will enter your life in the next phase of your journey. As these shifts continue unfolding, another sign often begins developing quietly inside you. A growing sense that you are ready for something new, even if you cannot fully explain what that something is yet. Chosen one, this feeling does not usually arrive as excitement alone. It often comes with a strange mixture of anticipation and restlessness, as though the life you have been living has served its purpose, but can no longer contain the direction you feel yourself moving toward. The routines that once felt secure may now feel limited, and the future begins calling you forward in ways that are difficult to ignore. This readiness does not appear suddenly. It builds slowly through the experiences you have already survived. The challenges, the solitude, the relationships that ended, and the lessons learned during difficult seasons all begin forming a deeper confidence inside you. You may notice that situations which once intimidated you no longer carry the same power. Decisions that once felt overwhelming now seem clearer. It is as if your perspective has matured to a point where you can recognize that life is preparing to move forward again. Scripture often describes this moment as a transition between seasons, rather than a sudden miracle. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us, "To everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven." In other words, every stage of life eventually reaches completion. When one season closes, another begins opening, even before you fully understand what that new chapter will look like. This internal readiness is important because major changes rarely happen successfully when a person is still emotionally attached to the past. When the right connection appears, when new environments begin opening, and when opportunities start presenting themselves, you will need the willingness to step forward rather than remain anchored to what is familiar. The quiet confidence growing inside you now may be the clearest indication that your life is preparing to enter a chapter that could not have begun earlier, but is finally approaching at the right time. When people hear that someone successful or financially stable may enter their life, they often assume the attraction will revolve around appearance, status, or convenience. But individuals who have actually built something meaningful tend to evaluate relationships very differently. Chosen one, people who carry real responsibility, those who have navigated pressure, leadership, and long-term decision-making, usually learn very quickly that surface-level attraction cannot sustain a life built on structure and purpose. Over time, many of them begin searching for something far rarer than beauty or charm. They look for emotional intelligence, self-control, and the kind of resilience that only develops through real-life experience. Success exposes a person to many types of individuals, and through that exposure, they begin recognizing patterns. Some people are drawn to stability simply because they want comfort. Others admire wealth but do not understand the discipline required to create or maintain it. This is why many successful individuals become cautious about who they allow into their lives. They are not only looking for companionship, they are looking for someone capable of standing beside them when pressure, responsibility, and complexity inevitably appear. Proverbs 31:10 captures this idea clearly when it says, "A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies." The value described here is not material. It is the character behind the person. This is where your journey begins to make sense in ways you may not have realized before. The experiences you went through, the seasons of solitude, the relationships that ended, the challenges that forced you to grow stronger, created something inside you that comfort alone could never produce. Depth of character cannot be developed in easy environments where everything works out smoothly. It is formed in moments where you had to adapt, endure uncertainty, and continue moving forward without constant support. Because of this, the life you lived has built a perspective that cannot be taught in comfort. You understand struggle, patience, and perseverance in ways many people never experience. That kind of understanding changes how a person thinks, how they communicate, and how they respond when situations become difficult. When someone who has built success encounters a person with that kind of depth, they often recognize something rare immediately. An individual who is not easily shaken, someone who carries strength beneath the surface, rather than simply projecting confidence. And for someone who has already learned how fragile superficial connections can be, that kind of strength becomes incredibly valuable. One of the reasons this connection can become so powerful is that the qualities you carry may be exactly what this person has been searching for, without openly saying it. Chosen one. Individuals who have achieved stability or influence often encounter many people who admire their success, but very few who truly understand the weight that comes with it. Over time, they become less impressed by appearances and more attentive to character. Humility becomes rare in environments where status and recognition dominate conversations. Quiet strength becomes more valuable than loud confidence. And perspective, especially the kind built through real struggle, becomes something they recognize immediately when they encounter it. The humility you developed while navigating difficult seasons may be one of the most powerful qualities you carry. People who have experienced success often notice the difference between someone who approaches life with entitlement and someone who moves with gratitude and awareness. Strength also reveals itself in subtle ways. It is not only the ability to endure hardship, but the ability to remain calm, thoughtful, and grounded when situations become uncertain. Scripture highlights the value of this kind of inner character in 1 Peter 3:4, which describes the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. This kind of strength is not loud, but it carries a depth that thoughtful individuals recognize quickly. When these qualities meet someone who has built financial stability, influence, and access to opportunities, a natural balance can begin forming within the relationship. One person may carry resources, networks, and the ability to open doors that others cannot easily access. The other may carry insight, emotional intelligence, and the grounding perspective that prevents success from becoming unstable or reckless. Each person brings something the other does not fully possess alone. In this way, the relationship becomes less about dependency and more about complementing strengths. Resources and influence create possibilities, while wisdom and grounded perspective guide those possibilities in the right direction. Ecclesiastes 4:9 reflects this balance clearly. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. When two individuals bring different forms of strength into the same partnership, the result is not imbalance, it is multiplication. When a relocation like this unfolds, the most profound change is often the environment you begin operating within. Chosen one. Environments shape what a person is exposed to every single day. The conversations you hear, the ambitions of the people around you, and the level of opportunity circulating within a place all influence how quickly your own life can expand. Entering a new city or country connected to someone who already operates in spaces of stability and influence may place you in surroundings where opportunities appear more frequently and growth happens at a faster pace. In these environments, exposure becomes a powerful force. You may find yourself surrounded by individuals who think strategically about business, leadership, and long-term vision. The discussions happening around you may revolve around building projects, creating partnerships, or expanding ideas into real opportunities. Being present in these spaces changes how you see your own potential. Proverbs 27:17 expresses this dynamic clearly. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. The people and environments around you naturally begin sharpening your perspective. This shift can feel almost surreal at first. What once seemed distant or unreachable, certain lifestyles, networks, or levels of opportunity, may gradually become part of your everyday reality. The places you visit, the people you meet, and the conversations you participate in begin reflecting a different level of possibility. What used to feel extraordinary slowly becomes normal, simply because you are now living inside an environment where those things happen regularly. That is why this new chapter carries such transformative potential. The change is not only about location or lifestyle. It is about stepping into a space where your growth can accelerate because the environment itself encourages expansion. Opportunities that once felt out of reach may begin appearing naturally, and the future that once seemed distant may slowly become the life you are actually living. As the possibility of such a connection approaches, preparation becomes just as important as anticipation. Chosen one of the greatest mistakes people make when they sense that something meaningful may be entering their life is allowing excitement to turn into desperation. When a person begins chasing relationships out of fear of missing an opportunity, their judgment becomes clouded and their emotional balance weakens. Desperation attracts the wrong connections far more often than it attracts the right one. That is why maintaining emotional stability during this period is critical. You are not meant to force the arrival of what is being prepared for you. You are meant to remain grounded while the right moment unfolds. This balance protects your clarity. When you are emotionally centered, you are able to recognize genuine alignment instead of confusing it with temporary attention or superficial attraction. Scripture quietly reinforces this mindset in Psalm 46:10, which says, "Be still and know that I am God." Stillness in this sense is not passivity. It is trust combined with self-control. It allows you to observe people and situations with discernment, rather than reacting impulsively out of loneliness or urgency. At the same time, the most powerful preparation you can focus on is personal discipline and growth. Continue strengthening the areas of your life that you can control: your habits, your mindset, your knowledge, and your character. A meaningful partnership does not arrive to replace your purpose. It arrives to complement it. The person entering your life will likely respect someone who is already committed to self-development, rather than someone waiting for another individual to provide direction. Maintaining self-respect is equally important during this season. Do not shrink your identity, compromise your values, or lower your standards simply to create space for someone to enter your life. Healthy relationships are not built on one person abandoning who they are to please the other. They are built on two individuals who already understand their worth and are capable of standing independently. When that kind of confidence meets the right connection, the relationship begins on a foundation of mutual respect rather than insecurity. As you prepare for this possibility, there is one principle you must hold on to with absolute clarity. Never shrink who you are in order to impress someone who carries status, influence, or wealth. Chosen one. Environments connected to success can sometimes create a quiet pressure where people begin adjusting themselves to appear more acceptable, more impressive, or more compatible with those who seem powerful. They soften their opinions, hide parts of their personality, or abandon their natural confidence simply to avoid losing someone they believe is out of their league. But the truth is that the moment you begin diminishing your identity to gain approval, the foundation of the relationship becomes unstable. A connection that is meant to exist will not require you to perform a different version of yourself. The person who truly belongs in your life will recognize the authenticity, perspective, and strength you already carry. Scripture reflects this idea clearly in Galatians 6:4-5, which encourages each person to examine their own work and carry their own load. The message is simple but powerful. A healthy life and a healthy relationship requires individuals who are secure in who they are, rather than constantly reshaping themselves to gain validation. This is why the strongest partnerships rarely form between one powerful individual and one dependent admirer. The most enduring relationships emerge when two people stand firmly in their own purpose. One may bring resources, influence, and opportunities. The other may bring insight, resilience, and grounding wisdom. Neither person exists to replace the identity of the other. Instead, they amplify what each already carries. When both individuals maintain their own sense of direction, the partnership becomes something far stronger than attraction or convenience. It becomes alignment. Two lives moving forward with clarity, supporting each other without losing themselves in the process. And that kind of balance is what allows a relationship to grow not only in stability, but also in purpose. As this message comes to its conclusion, it is important to remember one truth that many people overlook when they think about destiny. Chosen one, divine alignment often does not appear through events alone. It appears through people. Throughout life, there are certain individuals who enter your path at precise moments and quietly redirect the course of everything that follows. At first, the meeting may seem ordinary, even accidental, but as time unfolds, it becomes clear that the connection carried far greater significance than anyone realized in that first moment. Scripture hints at this pattern repeatedly, reminding us in Proverbs 16:9 that in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. In other words, even the people who cross your path can be part of a larger arrangement unfolding beyond what you initially see. At the same time, it is important to understand the true nature of the connection being described here. The person who may soon enter your life, someone stable, influential, and capable of opening new environments, is not arriving as a rescuer. Your journey has already proven that you are capable of standing on your own. The purpose of this relationship is not to replace your strength, but to walk beside it. Two individuals whose paths have been developing separately may finally intersect at a moment when both are ready to expand into a new chapter. Ecclesiastes 4:12 captures this balance with a simple image. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Because of this, the most important thing you can do now is remain observant and open. Sometimes the connections that change our lives begin quietly, through a conversation, an introduction, or a meeting that initially appears ordinary. They do not always arrive with dramatic signs or obvious announcements. Instead, they unfold gradually, revealing their significance only after time has passed. And this is where many people miss what heaven is doing. They expect life-changing moments to arrive with noise, certainty, and immediate clarity. But the person who changes your life forever often appears in the most unexpected way, at a moment when you were not actively searching, but were simply ready. That readiness, the strength built through solitude, the wisdom formed through struggle, and the identity shaped through experience, is what allows the connection to finally take its place in your story. So if there is one message to carry forward from this moment, it is this: preparation and timing are rarely separate. When the seasons of growth you endured finally meet the moment God has prepared, the meeting of 2 lives can unlock a future that neither person could have reached alone. Sometimes it takes only one relationship, aligned at the exact right time, to open the door to an entirely new chapter of life.